The crystalline pendant hung against Alex's chest, its facets catching the sterile white light of the diplomatic chamber. 23 years he'd worn it, through academy training, through his first deep space assignment, through the war that nearly ended humanity. The small hexagonal artifact pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, responding to his elevated heart rate as the doors before him began to open. Jiggy entered, flanked by her sentinel guard, their chitinous armor gleaming like polished obsidian. But Alex's eyes found only her, the Jathiri queen who had saved his life when he was merely a frightened child, lost in the Kepler 442 system. She had changed. Where once her exoskeleton bore the iridescent greens and blues of youth, now it shimmered with deep purples and golds, the markings of maturity and power. Her compound eyes, each containing thousands of ommatidia, fixed upon him with an intelligence that still made him feel simultaneously exposed and understood. 4 arms moved with practiced grace, 2 clasped in formal greeting, while the others adjusted the translation collar at her thorax. Ambassador Chen, her voice emerged from the collar in perfect Mandarin, though Alex knew she was actually communicating through pheromone patterns and subsonic vibrations. The human coalition sends its regards through you. Alex bowed in the Jathiri fashion, lowering his head while extending both palms upward. Your radiance, the coalition is honored by your audience. We come seeking. He stopped. Jiggy's primary attention nodes had locked onto his chest where the pendant rested. One delicate forklow extended, hovering near but not touching the artifact. You kept it, she said, and the translation couldn't quite capture the harmonic complexity of her tone. After all this time, Alex Chen, you still carry my gift. The formal atmosphere evaporated. Her guards shifted uncertainly as their queen abandoned protocol, closing the distance between herself and the human ambassador. Alex felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest, not from the pendant, but from memory. He had been 9 years old aboard his parents' research vessel when the gravitational anomaly struck. The ship, the Pathfinder, had been torn apart by forces no human science could explain. Alex's escape pod had drifted for 6 days before Jiggy's scout ship found him, half dead from dehydration and terror. She had been young then too, barely past her 3rd molt, assigned to a long-range exploration mission far from the Jathiri homeworld. Against the protocols of her people, who had no first contact agreements with humanity, she'd brought the human child aboard. For 3 months, while her ship completed its survey mission and made the long journey back toward human space, Jiggy had cared for him. She'd taught him the basics of her language, shown him the stars from a Jathiri perspective, and helped him process the grief of losing his parents. On the day they reached the human outpost at Tau Ceti, she'd placed the pendant around his neck. This is a memory crystal, she told him through the crude translation software. It contains a fragment of my consciousness, my friendship with you. When you look at it, you will remember that the universe, though vast and often cruel, also contains moments of unexpected kindness. I never took it off, Alex said now, his voice rougher than he intended. Not once. Jiggy's antennae quivered, the Jathiri equivalent of a smile. I wondered when I saw your name on the diplomatic roster. Alex Chen, could it be the same small human I once knew, the one who cried for his mother and asked me if the stars had names? They do have names, Alex replied, falling into a response pattern they'd established decades ago. We gave them names because we needed to believe we could know them. And now you come to me not as a lost child, but as an ambassador. The coalition sends you to negotiate what, exactly? The treaty violation reports mention territorial disputes near the Betelgeuse cluster. Alex felt the weight of his mission settle back onto his shoulders. The past 3 weeks had seen Jathiri ships cross into human-claimed space 17 times. 2 mining installations had been destroyed. The coalition feared war, a war humanity would lose. The Jathiri possessed technology that operated on principles human scientists barely understood, weapons that could collapse stars, shields that existed partially in other dimensions. Your Radiance, the coalition believes there's been a misunderstanding. The Betelgeuse cluster was designated neutral territory under the Proxima Accords. The Proxima Accords were written by species who breathe oxygen and think in 3 dimensions, Jiggy interrupted, her tone sharpening. They fail to account for the substrate currents that run beneath spacetime itself. What you call the Betelgeuse cluster sits atop a convergence node crucial to the survival of my people. We didn't violate your territory, Ambassador. We are preventing a catastrophe you lack the sensors to even detect. Alex's mind raced. Substrate currents. He'd read about the theoretical framework in xenophysics journals. The hypothesis that beneath the observable universe ran rivers of exotic matter and energy, detectable only to species with different sensory ranges. If the Jathiri could perceive these currents, it would explain so much about their seemingly impossible technology. "Can you show me," he asked, "if I could understand, if I could bring proof back to the coalition?" Proof? Jiggy's laugh was a chittering sound that needed no translation. "How do you show color to the blind, Alex? How do you explain music to those without ears?" She turned away, her robes, woven from some material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, flowing behind her. For a moment, Alex thought he'd failed, that the mission would end before it began. Then he felt the pendant grow warm against his skin. Jiggy stopped. "Unless, the memory crystal. It's attuned to your neural patterns after all these years. With modifications, I could use it as a bridge. You could perceive, for a moment, what I perceive." "Is that possible?" "It's dangerous," she corrected. "Human neurology isn't designed to process multidimensional sensory data. It could cause permanent damage, madness, death even." Alex didn't hesitate. "Show me." Jiggy led him to a chamber deep within her ship, a spherical room where walls seemed to exist in more than 3 axes. She removed the pendant from his neck with gentle precision, placing it in a device that looked like a lotus flower made of liquid mercury. "Think of this as a translator," she explained, her 4 arms working across multiple control surfaces simultaneously. "But instead of converting language, it converts sensory paradigms. You'll perceive reality as I do, but filtered through your human consciousness. It will only last 37 seconds, any longer and your synapses will begin to fuse." She placed a crown of similar material around his head. "Are you certain?" Alex met her compound eyes, seeing his reflection fractured into thousands of pieces. "I trust you. I trusted you when I was 9 years old and lost in the dark. I trust you now." The device activated. Reality folded. Alex saw the universe peel back like layers of skin, revealing the machinery underneath. The substrate currents Jiggy had described blazed across his vision like rivers of living fire, flowing through and around normal space. They converged at the Betelgeuse cluster in a knot of incomprehensible complexity, and that knot was fraying. He understood instantly. If it unraveled, the cascade would tear holes in spacetime across 17 light-years. Dozens of systems, human and Jathiri alike, would be consumed. The mining installations humanity had built there were like children playing with matches on a hydrogen fuel depot. But more than that, he saw Jiggy, not as his eyes perceived her, but as she truly was. A consciousness distributed across multiple dimensions, her thoughts rippling through the substrate itself. He felt the weight of her responsibility, the loneliness of being a queen to billions, the ache she'd carried since their parting 23 years ago. The connection severed, Alex gasped, finding himself on the floor, Jiggy's claws supporting his head. "You saw," she said quietly. "I saw," his voice was hoarse. "We didn't know, we couldn't know, but now I do, and I'll make them understand." The negotiations took 3 weeks. Alex served as an intermediary, his unique experience allowing him to translate not just words but concepts between species. The coalition agreed to evacuate the Betelgeuse cluster. In return, the Jathiri shared the substrate current maps for surrounding sectors, revealing resources and dangers humanity had never imagined. On the final day, as Alex prepared to return to human space, Jiggy returned the pendant to him personally. "You've grown well, little Alex," she said. The frightened child became a bridge between worlds. "Because you showed me that different doesn't mean enemy," he replied. "You taught me that first." Her antennae touched his forehead, a Jathiri gesture of deep affection. "Keep the pendant. Let it remind you that friendship, once forged in kindness, can change the fate of civilizations." As Alex's shuttle pulled away from the Jathiri ship, he looked down at the crystal glowing against his chest. Through it, he could almost feel Jiggy's presence, stretched across the light years, wishing him well. He'd carried her gift for 23 years. He'd carry it for the rest of his life, a reminder that the universe, vast and strange, was also capable of connection, that an alien queen and a human child could forge a bond strong enough to prevent a war. The stars ahead held mysteries and dangers beyond counting, but they also held hope. Alex touched the pendant and smiled.